The twin suns of Kepler were to be cast long shadows across the crystalline formations that jutted from the planet's surface like frozen lightning. Celeste Voss knelt beside one of the larger structures, her fingers dancing across her scanner as readings flooded her display. The xenobiologist had been on this world for 3 months, and every day brought new wonders that challenged everything humanity thought they knew about life in the universe. Another anomalous reading, Marcus Reed's voice, carried a note of gentle teasing as he approached, his own equipment cases slung over his shoulder. The communications specialist had become her closest companion on this remote research mission, their professional collaboration slowly blossoming into something deeper. Celeste looked up, brushing a strand of auburn hair from her face. More than anomalous, Marcus, I think these formations are trying to communicate with us. He set down his cases and crouched beside her, close enough that she could smell the faint scent of the ozone generators from their base camp on his clothes. Communicate how? They're mineral deposits, beautiful ones, but still just rocks. That's what I thought too. She gestured to her scanner, excitement evident in her voice. But look at the electromagnetic patterns. They're not random. There's structure, repetition, almost like language. Marcus finished, his expression shifting from skepticism to wonder. Show me. For the next hour, they worked side by side, Marcus connecting his communication arrays to Celeste's biological sensors. As the data flowed between their systems, a pattern emerged that made them both fall silent. The crystalline formations weren't just conducting electromagnetic signals, they were generating them, modulating them, creating complex weaves of information that span not just the immediate area, but seemed to extend far beyond the planet's atmosphere. This is incredible, Marcus whispered, his hand finding hers as they stared at the display. It's like they've created a network that spans, I can't even tell how far. The signals are bouncing off our satellites, through the asteroid belt, possibly reaching other star systems. Celeste felt her heart racing, though she wasn't sure if it was from the scientific discovery or the way Marcus's thumb was gently tracing across her knuckles. What if this is how they've always communicated? What if every habitable world has formations like these, and we've been blind to an entire galactic conversation happening right under our noses? That evening, as the twin suns set and painted the sky in shades of violet and gold, they sat outside their research dome, sharing a simple meal and watching the crystalline formations begin to glow with bioluminescent light. The effect was breathtaking, like sitting in the middle of a vast fiber optic network. If you're right about this, Marcus said softly, it changes everything, not just for science, but for humanity's place in the galaxy. Celeste leaned against his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his body through their environmental suits. That's what scares me. Discoveries this big, they don't always stay in the hands of scientists. Marcus turned to face her, his eyes reflecting the gentle glow of the formations around them. Then we make sure we document everything, create redundant records, make it impossible for anyone to suppress this. She nodded, but a chill ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the alien night air. Promise me something, Marcus. If anything happens to me, if this discovery gets buried or I disappear, promise you'll find a way to make sure the truth comes out. Nothing's going to happen to you, he said firmly, but then he saw the serious expression on her face. But, yes, I promise, though I'd prefer to keep you safe and let the discovery speak for itself. Their first kiss happened then, soft and tentative under the alien stars, with the mysterious network humming its ancient songs around them. For a few precious moments, Celeste allowed herself to imagine a future where they could explore the galaxy together, unlocking its secrets as a team. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of intense research and growing intimacy. They mapped the network's extent, documented its communication protocols, and made the staggering discovery that it wasn't just facilitating communication, it was alive. A vast collective consciousness that spanned multiple star systems. Each crystal formation was like a neuron in an impossibly large brain, and somehow it had begun responding to their presence. That it was Marcus who first noticed they were being watched. The corporate shuttles that appeared on the horizon weren't scheduled for another month, and their transponder codes were classified. Within hours, their research camp was surrounded by personnel from Apex Industries. The megacorporation that funded their expedition. Pack only the essential data, Celeste whispered to Marcus, as men in tactical gear searched their equipment. Hide the backup drives. The corporate executive who introduced herself as Regional Director Hayes was all smiles and bureaucratic politeness. I'm afraid we've had to accelerate our timeline. New directives from Earth require all xenobiological research to be transferred to our secure facilities for evaluation. The research isn't complete, Celeste protested. We need at least another month to properly document the communication protocols. I understand your enthusiasm, but corporate priorities have shifted. You'll continue your work at our facility on Luna Base 7. But Celeste knew better. She'd heard the whispered stories about researchers who'd made inconvenient discoveries, how they'd been transferred to remote facilities, and their work had simply vanished. That night, as they prepared for transport, she managed a few moments alone with Marcus. Take the emergency shuttle, she whispered urgently. Hide the real data off-world. Don't trust anyone from Apex. I'm not leaving you, Marcus said firmly. You have to. Someone needs to survive to tell this story. She pressed a small data crystal into his hand. This contains everything. If I don't make it off Luna Base 7, make sure the galaxy knows what we found here. The next morning, Marcus's shuttle was reported as having suffered a navigation malfunction. Disappearing into the asteroid field, Celeste was transported to Luna Base 7, where she spent 3 months in isolation, watching her discovery being weaponized and perverted by corporate interests. Her final transmission, smuggled out through a maintenance worker sympathetic to her cause, was a simple message recorded in the crystalline formations. Own language, the stars remember, and blood. Calls to blood. She disappeared that same night. The official report cited an accident in the mining tunnels, but no body was ever found. 25 years later, her son would begin to hear the stars singing her name. 25 years after Celeste Voss disappeared into the corporate machinery of Apex Industries, her son Jackson stood before a wall of quantum communication arrays. In the depths of Space Station Meridian, at 25, he possessed his mother's intuitive understanding of complex systems, though he'd never known her long enough to realize it. The official records listed her as having died in a mining accident when he was an infant, leaving him to be raised in the sterile efficiency of the station's orphan quarters. Another ghost signal. Jack's Nora Blackwood's voice carried a note of gentle concern as she approached his workstation. The station's head archivist had become his closest friend over the past 3 years, their professional relationship gradually deepening into something neither had quite dared to name. Jackson's fingers paused over the quantum frequency modulators, his dark eyes reflecting the cascade of data flowing across his screens. More than a ghost. Look at this pattern. He gestured to a series of electromagnetic pulses that appeared seemingly random, but held an underlying structure that made his pulse quicken. Nora moved closer, close enough that he could smell the faint scent of the hydroponic gardens where she spent her off hours tending to the station's small collection of Earth flora. Her shoulder brushed against his as she leaned in to study the display, sending a familiar warmth through him that he tried to ignore. It's beautiful, she murmured, her finger tracing the wave patterns on the screen, like music. But not quite. Where's it coming from? That's the mystery. The signal originates from empty space, but it's being relayed through our deep space communication network. Someone or something is using our own infrastructure to send messages we can't decode. Jackson pulled up a 3-dimensional map showing the signal's path, and it's not random. Every transmission follows the same route, bouncing off relay stations. In a specific sequence. Nora frowned, her analytical mind already working through the implications. That's impossible. Our relay network is secure, encrypted with quantum keys that change hourly. Nothing should be able to hijack it without leaving traces unless. Jackson hesitated, then pulled up another screen. Unless someone designed a backdoor into the system from the very beginning. Look at these base code signatures. They're embedded so deep in the communication protocols that they're practically invisible. But they're there. As Nora studied the code, her expression shifted from curiosity to alarm. Jax, these signatures, they predate the current communication network by decades. This backdoor was built into the first-generation quantum rays. the ones designed during the Kepler 442b expeditions. The mention of Kepler 440 to be sent an unexpected chill down Jackson's spine. He'd heard whispered references to failed expeditions and corporate cover-ups, but the details had always been classified beyond his security clearance. What happened on Kepler 440b? Nora glanced around the communications center, ensuring they were alone among the humming arrays and holographic displays. Come with me. There are things in the restricted archives that I think you need to see. The restricted section of the station's archives was a maze of sealed storage units and quantum encrypted data vaults. Nora's access codes opened doors that Jackson had never known existed, leading them deeper into the station's forgotten history. Finally, she stopped before a particular vault, marked only with a date from 25 years ago. I've been researching the Kepler expeditions for years, Nora said softly, her hands trembling slightly as she input her authorization codes. There are gaps in the official records, people who simply vanished from the corporate databases. But the archives remember everything, even when it's supposed to be forgotten. The vault opened with a soft hiss, revealing rows of data crystals and physical documents, actual paper, a rarity in their digital age. Nora pulled out a file marked with the name Celeste Voss and handed it to Jackson. Your surname isn't exactly common on Meridian, she said gently. I've suspected for months that you might be connected to her somehow. Jackson's hands shook as he opened the file. His mother's face looked back at him from a personnel photograph, the same dark eyes, the same stubborn jawline, the same intuitive intelligence that had always set him apart from his peers. But it was the research notes that made his breath catch. Page after page of detailed observations about crystalline formations that exhibited complex electromagnetic behaviors, theories about galactic communication networks, and urgent warnings about corporate suppression of scientific discoveries. She discovered something, he whispered, reading through her final reports. Something that could have changed everything about how we communicate across the galaxy. Nora moved closer, reading over his shoulder. Look at the dates. Her last official report was filed 3 days before she supposedly died in that mining accident. But these personal notes, she pointed to a series of encrypted entries. These continue for weeks after her official death, as they work together to decode the encrypted entries, their heads bent close over the ancient documents. Jackson became increasingly aware of Nora's presence beside him, the way her brow furrowed in concentration, the gentle warmth of her hand when it accidentally brushed his, the soft intake of breath when they uncovered particularly damning evidence. She was pregnant, Nora said suddenly, pointing to a medical report buried deep in the file. Celeste Voss was pregnant when she disappeared. The baby was born in the corporate medical facility on Luna Base 7. Jackson felt the world shift around him as the pieces fell into place. That baby was me. Which means, Nora continued, her voice filled with growing excitement and trepidation, that everything in these files, all her research, all her discoveries, it's your inheritance. And if she was right about the communication network, if it's still active. She was interrupted by an alarm klaxon echoing through the archives. Emergency lighting bathed them in red as automated security protocols engaged, sealing the vault doors. Through the transparent aluminum barriers, they could see corporate security personnel in tactical gear moving through the outer archives. They've been monitoring access to the Kepler files, Nora realized, her face pale in the emergency lighting. Jax, we need to get this information off the station before they can suppress it again. Working frantically, they copied every file, every document, every scrap of evidence onto portable data crystals. As the security forces grew closer, Nora made a decision that would change both their lives forever. I'm coming with you, she said firmly, downloading the last of the files, wherever this leads. Whatever your mother discovered, it's bigger than either of us can handle alone. Jackson looked into her eyes, seeing not just the brilliant archivist who'd helped him uncover the truth, but the brave woman who was willing to risk everything to help him honor his mother's memory. Are you sure, once we leave Meridian, there's no going back? In response, she reached out and took his hand, intertwining their fingers. I've been waiting my whole life for something worth fighting for. I think I just found it. As the security Forces breached the archive entrance. Jackson and Nora escaped through the maintenance shafts, carrying with them the explosive truth about Celeste Voss's discovery. Behind them, corporate agents moved to sanitize the archives once again, but they were too late. The seeds of revolution had already been planted, and somewhere in the vast network of space, ancient signals continued to pulse with patient persistence, waiting for the right person to finally hear their call. In the cramped confines of the maintenance shaft, as they crawled toward freedom, Jackson felt Nora's hand squeeze his encouragingly. For the first time in his life, he wasn't facing the unknown alone. His mother's legacy had given him not just a purpose, but a partner who believed in the truth as fiercely as he did. The galaxy was about to remember Celeste Voss's name, and her son would make sure it sang across the stars. The cantina on Freeport Station existed in that gray area between legitimate commerce and outright piracy, where questions weren't asked and credits spoke louder than corporate warrants. Jackson and Nora sat in a shadowy booth, nursing synthetic alcohol while studying the faces of potential smuggler pilots. They'd been fugitives for 2 weeks now, jumping from station to station as Apex Industries security forces pursued them across 3 star systems. That one, Nora whispered, nodding toward a woman at the bar who moved with the fluid grace of someone comfortable in variable gravity. Kira Chenokafer, independent freight runner. Clean record with the Pilots Guild, but rumored to take jobs that skirt the edges of legality. Jackson studied the pilot with interest. Kira was perhaps 32, with short-cropped black hair and augmented neural interfaces visible at her temples, military-grade modifications that suggested serious piloting skills. She wore a battered flight jacket over practical cargo pants, and her dark eyes constantly scanned the room with the alertness of someone who'd survived in dangerous places. "She looks expensive," Jackson murmured. "Good pilots usually are. But your mother's research data is worth more than credits if we can get to Kepler 442b and prove what she discovered." When they approached Kira's table, she didn't look up from her drink immediately. "Whatever you're selling, I'm not buying. And if you're corporate, I suggest you find somewhere else to drink. We need passage to the Kepler system," Jackson said simply. "No questions asked, no manifest filed. And we can pay in advance." That got her attention. Kira's eyes flicked up to study them both, taking in their nervous energy and the way they kept glancing at the cantina's entrances. Kepler's quarantine space, corporate mining zone, heavy security patrols. Not exactly a pleasure cruise. Nora leaned forward, her voice low but intense. "We have information about what really happened on Kepler 442b 25 years ago. Information that certain parties would kill to keep buried. And you think I care about ancient history?" Kira asked, though her tone suggested otherwise. "I think you care about justice," Jackson replied, sensing something in the pilot's carefully controlled expression. "And I think you've had your own run-ins with corporate power." Kira was quiet for a long moment, then gestured for them to sit. 50,000 credits. Half up front. My ship, my rules, and if we run into trouble, I decide whether we fight or run. Take it or leave it. Deal, Nora said immediately, transferring the credits from their dwindling emergency fund. 3 hours later, they were aboard Kira's ship, the Stardancer, a modified courier vessel that had been enhanced for speed and stealth. As they prepared for departure, Jackson found himself watching Kira work at the pilot's controls with admiration. Her movements were precise and confident, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces with practiced ease. "She's beautiful," Nora said softly, appearing beside him in the cramped cockpit. "The ship?" Jackson asked, though he suspected that wasn't what Nora meant. "The ship, yes, but I was talking about her." Nora's tone was carefully neutral, but Jackson caught the slight edge of uncertainty. "You were staring." "Professional appreciation," Jackson replied, then caught Nora's skeptical look. "I was thinking about how much skill it takes to pilot a ship like this, nothing more." As they jumped to hyperspace, beginning their 3-day journey to the Kepler system, the close quarters of the Stardancer forced them into proximity that revealed more about each other than formal introductions might have. Kira, it turned out, had been a military pilot before going independent. serving in the border conflicts where corporate interests often clashed with colonial independence movements, lost my squadron to an Apex Industries training accident, she revealed on their second day out as they shared a meal in the ship's tiny common area. 12 good pilots vaporized because some corporate executive decided their mineral rights were worth more than military lives. I'm sorry, Nora said. Genuinely, is that why you help people like us? Kira shrugged, but Jackson could see the pain in her eyes. Credits are credits. But sometimes a job comes along that feels like payback. As they traveled deeper into quarantine space, Jackson found himself drawn into long conversations with both women. Nora's encyclopedic knowledge of galactic history complemented his technical expertise, while Kira's practical experience added a grounding reality to their theoretical discussions. More than once, he caught himself appreciating the way Kira's laugh lit up her usually serious face, or how her hand would briefly touch his arm when she was making a point. It was on their final day of travel that Kira made a discovery that changed everything. I've been monitoring corporate communications, she announced, her voice tight with excitement. There's chatter about a high-value prisoner being held on Titan mining station, someone with intimate knowledge of the Kepler expeditions. Jackson felt his heart race. Could it be Marcus Reed? Nora confirmed, pulling up the personnel files they'd stolen from Meridian. Your mother's research partner, according to these records. He died in a shuttle accident 25 years ago. Except he didn't, Kira said grimly. And if Apex has been holding him all this time, they've been interrogating him about what he and your mother discovered. The mining station was a fortress of metal and ceramic, bristling with defensive weaponry and patrol ships. But Kira had a plan that was equal parts brilliant and insane. Using the Stardancer's stealth capabilities, they approached during a shift change, when the station's attention was focused on incoming or haulers. The beauty of military modifications, Kira explained as she guided them through the station's blind spots, is that they're designed to be invisible to corporate sensors. They docked at a maintenance bay, their ship's transponder broadcasting the identity of a scheduled repair vessel inside the station. They followed Nora's analysis of the facility schematics, moving through service corridors toward the high-security detention levels. When they found Marcus Reed, Jackson nearly didn't recognize him as the young man from his mother's photographs. 25 years of imprisonment had aged him, leaving him gaunt and gray-haired. But his eyes still held the same intelligent fire that had drawn Celeste Voss. You have her eyes, Marcus whispered when he saw Jackson. Your Celeste son. The reunion was interrupted by the wail of security alarms. Corporate mercenaries in powered armor were storming through the station, and their escape route was rapidly being cut off. This way, Kira shouted, leading them through a maintenance shaft that connected to the station's communication array. If we can't get out quietly, we'll have to fight our way through. As laser fire erupted around them, Marcus grabbed Jackson's arm with surprising strength. The network, he gasped. Your mother was right. It's not just a communication system, it's alive, a collective consciousness that spans the galaxy. And it's been trying to contact us for decades. Contact us how? Nora demanded as they reached the communication array. Marcus's hands moved over the controls with practiced efficiency, despite his years of captivity. Through the quantum resonance patterns, it's been encoding messages in our own communication networks, waiting for someone with the right genetic markers to hear them. Genetic markers? Jackson asked. The crystalline formations on Kepler-4 were to be they bonded with your mother on a molecular level. That bond passed to you. You're not just her son, Jackson. You're the bridge it's been waiting for. As if in response to his words, the communication array suddenly blazed to life, filled with patterns of light and sound that seemed to speak directly to Jackson's consciousness. For a moment, he could feel the vast intelligence reaching out to him across the void, ancient and patient and infinitely compassionate. Then Kira was grabbing his arm, pulling him toward their ship. As explosions rocked the station, family reunions later, heroic escapes now. As the Stardancer blasted away from the mining station, pursued by corporate fighters, Jackson held onto both Nora and his father, while Kira's expert piloting kept them alive through the running battle. But in his mind, he could still hear the Alien consciousness calling to him, promising answers that would reshape the galaxy. The hunt had begun in earnest, and the stakes were higher than any of them had imagined. The Apex Industries fortress on Kepler-44 to be rose from the crystalline landscape like a cancer, its dark metal walls a stark contrast to the shimmering formations that Celeste Voss had once studied with wonder from their concealed position in the hills overlooking the facility. Jackson could see the massive extraction equipment that had been built around his mother's Discovery corporate machinery designed to harvest and weaponize the alien consciousness. 25 years, Marcus whispered, his weathered hands trembling as he gazed at the site where his life had been shattered. 25 years they've been torturing it, bleeding it, turning its gift into a tool of oppression. Nora pressed her hand gently against Jackson's shoulder, offering silent support as father and son prepared for what might be their final mission together. Over the past week aboard the Stardancer, the two men had begun to bridge the gulf of lost years, sharing memories of Celeste and planning their assault on the facility that had destroyed their family. The neural interface chamber is in the central spire, Marcus continued, pointing to the tallest structure within the complex. That's where they've been forcing connection with the network. If we can reach it, Jackson might be able to establish proper communication. Kira checked her weapons for the third time, her pilot's precision now focused on combat tactics, securities. Heavy, but I've identified a weakness in their patrol patterns. We'll have a 15-minute window during the shift change as they prepared to move. Jackson caught Nora's hand, intertwining their fingers in what had become a familiar gesture of comfort and connection. If something happens to me in there, nothing's going to happen, Nora said firmly. But her eyes reflected the same fear that gnawed at him. We've come too far to lose each other now. The infiltration went smoother than expected. Kira's military training proved invaluable as she guided them through the facility's blind spots, while Marcus's intimate knowledge of the layout from his years of captivity provided the perfect roadmap. They encountered minimal resistance until they reached the central spire, where corporate security began to close in around them. It was there that they met Vera Nightshade. The Apex Industries regional executive was a woman in her mid-40s, immaculately dressed despite being in a battlefield environment. Her steel-gray hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her augmented eyes gleamed with predatory intelligence. As she stepped into the corridor ahead of them, flanked by a dozen armed guards, Jackson Voss, she said, her voice carrying the cultured tones of corporate aristocracy. Son of the infamous Celeste Voss, you've led us quite a chase across the galaxy. Let us pass. Jackson replied, though he could see their situation was hopeless. The guards had them surrounded, and Vera held all the tactical advantages. Oh, I don't think so. You see, you're exactly what we've been waiting for. Vera gestured toward the neural interface chamber, visible through the reinforced windows behind her. Your mother's genetic modifications, passed down through her bloodline, make you the perfect conduit for controlling the network. With you as our interface, we can expand our reach to every human colony in the galaxy. Control? Marcus stepped forward, his face twisted with disgust. You're not trying to communicate with it. You're enslaving it. Vera's smile was cold and calculating. Slavery is such an ugly word. I prefer optimization. The alien consciousness has resources and capabilities that could benefit humanity immensely. If properly directed, colonial rebellions could be prevented before they start. Dissent could be eliminated at the neurological level. Perfect peace through perfect control. That's not peace, Nora said fiercely. That's tyranny. That's progress, Vera countered. And young Jackson here is going to help us achieve it. The guards moved to surround them, but Jackson was already reaching out with senses he was only beginning to understand. The crystalline formations throughout the facility pulsed in response to his presence, their electromagnetic fields shifting and amplifying. He could feel the alien consciousness stirring, recognizing him as Celeste's son, welcoming him with an intelligence vast and ancient, and infinitely patient. Help us, he thought, directing the plea toward the network. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every piece of technology in the facility that contained quantum components suddenly began responding to the alien consciousness. Lights, flickered, security doors opened and closed randomly, and the neural interface chamber itself began to glow with building energy. Impossible, Vera breathed, watching her carefully controlled environment descend into chaos. The containment fields should prevent any unauthorized contact. You can't contain consciousness, Marcus said with grim satisfaction. Celeste knew. It's why she tried to warn you. In the confusion, Kira moved with lethal efficiency, her pilot's reflexes serving her well in close combat. She disabled the guards before diving behind cover, providing covering fire for the others. Nora grabbed Marcus, helping the older man toward the neural interface chamber while Jackson walked calmly through the chaos, the alien consciousness guiding and protecting him. Stop him, Vera screamed, drawing her own weapon, but it was too late. Jackson placed his hands on the neural interface, and the world exploded into light and sensation. Suddenly he was connected not just to the consciousness of Kepler-4 but to a vast network of intelligence that spanned thousands of worlds. He could feel the pain that Vera's experiments had caused, the way corporate greed had twisted the network's attempts at benevolent contact into tools of oppression. But he could also feel its hope. For 25 years, it had been waiting for someone like him, someone with the genetic markers his mother had passed down, someone who could serve as a true bridge between species rather than a conduit for control. We choose you, the consciousness whispered in his mind, its voice like the harmony of a billion stars. Will you speak for us? Will you help heal the wounds between our peoples? Yes, Jackson said aloud, feeling power and responsibility flowing through him in equal measure. The transformation was immediate. Every piece of Apex equipment connected to the network began shutting down, while the natural crystalline formations throughout the facility blazed with renewed life. The consciousness was freeing itself, reclaiming its voice after decades of forced silence. Vera fired her weapon at Jackson, but the shot was absorbed harmlessly by the energy field surrounding him. You don't understand, she snarled. Without corporate guidance, humanity will tear itself apart. We need control to maintain order. You need trust to build peace, Jackson replied, his voice now carrying harmonics that resonated through the facility's structure. And trust begins with freedom. As the alien consciousness fully awakened, stretching its influence across the galaxy, Jackson felt Nora's hand slip into his and his father's arm around his shoulders. Kira stood guard nearby, her weapon ready, but no longer needed as Vera's guards laid down their arms, overwhelmed by the presence they could feel but couldn't understand. The confrontation was over, but Jackson knew that the real work was just beginning. He was no longer just Celeste Voss's son, he was humanity's representative to a galactic community that had been waiting patiently for his species to mature enough to join them. The stars were singing, and finally, someone was listening, infiltrating corporate facility, tracking aliens' mysterious presence.